Halva. Mr. Walberg, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here.
Thank you.
During the prolonged school closures caused by the pandemic and the outsized, and I say that again, outsized teacher union influence, many parents were able to get a window into their child's education like never before. It's about time. They should have been doing it sooner. Parents knew that school closures were harming their children, and they needed to get back in the classroom as quickly as possible. We recently saw a sample of the devastating impact these schools' closures had on our children's education. In the nation's report card, student testing scores have declined in history, civics, reading, and math. Last year, the acting associate commissioner of the National Assessment of Education Progress said, "These are some of the largest declines we have ever observed in a single assessment cycle in 50 years, end quote. Mr. Secretary, in February of 2021, the CDC planned to release guidance to reopen schools regardless of community spread of COVID-19. But then the CDC consulted with the American Federation of Teachers and its president, Randy Weingarten, who provided edits to the reopening guidance. These edits, according to CNN's Jake Tapper at the time, would have allowed schools serving 99% of children to potentially close. Mr. Secretary, we know how important in-person schooling is, and we know how devastating remote learning has been. By 2021, we also knew that COVID posed low risk to children. So the question comes, Mr. Secretary, do you think the CDC was wrong to provide AFT President Weingarten veto power over their guidance, and do you think teachers' unions were wrong in discouraging schools from reopening?
Thank you, Congressman Walberg, for the question. I share the strong belief that our students needed to be in schools right away and that we needed to reopen our schools. When I took oath on March 2nd, 2021, 46% of the schools in this country were open full-time. Within 9 months, we were over 98% of our schools open full-time. So my actions prove that I, too, felt schools should be reopened.
And so you felt that Randy Weingarten should not have had veto power for the CDC?
I can speak to the Department of Education and what we were focused on.
Well, we're expecting the Secretary of Education to stand up to the teachers union when they're wrong. And they were the ones that seem to have veto power with this.
Mr. Walberg, when I was Commissioner of Education in Connecticut, and then when I became Secretary of Education for the whole country, we worked with various different stakeholders who were all on board with safely reopening our schools, and that's what we did.
I would hope that, and just, I guess getting to the punchline here, we would hope that in the future, that when we have science that goes on, and certainly not locking down schools again, that the Department of Education would be the strongest proponent for making schools open and working for the kids. Let's go on. We know that CDC closely consulted the two teachers unions, the AFT and the NEA, on school reopening guidance in 2021. This year, on April 25th, the New York Post reported, and I quote, AFT and the National Education Association also asked the White House and CDC for help shaping its press strategy to show the rank and file they and the Biden administration were on the same page, end quote. Mr. Secretary, yes or no, please. Did your department have any role in advising the NEA or AFT on their public relations strategies? Yes or no?
We take our work to communicate with the public very seriously. We don't engage in other groups.
Yes or no, that's what I asked.
I understand you're asking a yes or no question, but I want to be very clear on the values of the department. We take the role of communicating with families directly. And
did you have any role
House.
In advising the NEA or AFT?
We do not have a role in advising.
So you didn't have any, you had no role?
We do not have a role in advising the NEA or AFT.
Okay. Mr. Secretary, in states where teachers' unions are the strongest, schools were especially slow to open, including Michigan. According to the AIA's Return to Learn tracker, on June 7th, 2021, only 38% of California schools were fully in person. Illinois, only 40% were in person. New Jersey, 23% were fully in person. Despite the well-understood knowledge of the COVID, in that it posed very low risk to school children and the presence of an available vaccine for teachers. Why do you think schools were so slow to reopen where the teachers' union influence was and has been the strongest?
Thank you for the question. As I said at the beginning, for me as a father and as an educator, it was critical that we safely reopen schools as quickly as possible. The Department of Education acted immediately to make sure that we provided guidance to schools, which was never done from the onset of the pandemic until that day, to the summer when we did. We've been providing guidance on safe school reopening, and we're proud of the fact that within months, over 98% of our schools were safely reopened.
I see my time has ended. Thank you. I yield back.